Hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Resource Central. Our guest today is Mitzi McFatrich, and she is the Executive Director for Kansas Advocates for Better Care. And our subject today is going to be about basically how people can get better health care. Hi, Mitzi. How are you? Welcome to Resource Central.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
How did Kansas Advocates for Better Care basically start?
We started 40 years ago this year as a consumer advocacy organization and primarily advocating with and for people who lived in nursing facilities, whether they were older or people with disabilities. And we were committed to making sure that people got the appropriate levels of care that they needed and where they wanted to get them. So in the 1990s, we advocated really hard for at-home care services through the Medicaid program as well. And that's how we got started.
Okay. Next question I have is what basically is CanCare in a short synopsis version?
Yeah, CanCare is how the state of Kansas now provides all the health care and long-term services and supports to everybody in Kansas that's eligible for the federal and state Medicaid program. And that means that all of the health care that a child or an adult or an older adult needs is a part of that program, as well as the long-term care services and supports that people might need in order to stay at home or in a facility. It all comes through CanCare now. And CanCare is run now by 3 managed care insurance companies. I guess that's not quite the right way to say it. It's run by the state of Kansas, but it's operated through 3 privately owned managed care companies. So they're for-profit institutions providing services to Medicaid individuals in the state of Kansas.
You want to name the companies?
Yes. AmeriCare is one of them, United Healthcare is another, and Sunflower is the third one.
How was it determined that one person would be a member of one and one person a member of the other company?
When CanCare first was rolled out by the state of Kansas, people were randomly assigned to one provider or another, and they had 90 days in which to make some decision about whether or not they wanted to stay with that insurance company or go with a different one, which was a lot for people to manage since they didn't really know anything about the networks of providers that each of those companies was going to have fully at the time they had to make those decisions. But that's how it was done, and that is how it continues to be done when new people come into the system.
If I have a problem with my care or my plan of care, what are my options?
Well, you can do 3 things. If you are unhappy about the kind of care that you're receiving, the professionalism of the people providing the care, you can file what's called a grievance with the managed care company that you are receiving CanCare services through. There are also 2 other steps that you can take if you receive what's called a notice of negative action, which means that your services have been terminated, they've been cut off, or they've been reduced in amount or type, or they've been eliminated, or you've been denied eligibility for services if it's your first time applying and you believe you are eligible for those services and need them. An appeal and a state fair hearing. The appeal is filed with the managed care company. The state fair hearing request is filed with the Kansas Administrative Hearings Department. And they are sort of more legal in nature in terms of the things that people have to know about and do, which is part of the reason that we created a resource to kind of detail for folks what's involved in filing for an appeal with a managed care company or a state fair hearing with the state of Kansas. And one of the things that people don't necessarily know is that you can file for both an appeal and a state fair hearing. So you can ask the managed care company to review its decision, and at the same time you can ask the state of Kansas to review the managed care company's decision.
I don't know if you discussed this or not, but I was intrigued by reading your pamphlet about what is called a notice of action. So could you explain that?
I will. Every managed care company has an obligation, if they change your plan of care, to send you a notice of action. And on that notice of action, it should state what services you're approved for, any changes to your services, and if there have been any changes or elimination of your services, it should say exactly why that happened, like what is the change in your health care need, what is the change in your functionality. That means that you don't need as many hours of care or the same types of care that you might have needed previously. And if you disagree with that, if you disagree that you need fewer hours of care or that you need different types of care or fewer types of care than you were receiving, then that is the reason for filing an appeal and or a state fair hearing request.
There were 4 specific points that you wanted to discuss with us this afternoon. I wanted to know if you had finished with those or you wanted to continue with those.
Well, there's one other thing that I would like to mention, because one of the things that we've all been working for is a strong and independent ombuds program which can help individuals advocate for themselves and their needs during the process of grievance appeal or state fair hearing. Right now, the ombuds program that we have is limited in how much advocacy it can do. And so if a person wants to file a grievance appeal or state fair hearing, the CanCare Ombuds program can tell you a little bit about what is involved in that process, but they can't help you with the process. And one of the things I think it's important to know is that many times Centers for Independent Living staff are willing to help people with the process of filing, but it really is the Disability Rights Center of Kansas that has attorneys that can help with the process. If you go to a state fair hearing and you need some kind of legal assistance in that process or want some kind of legal assistance in that process, the Disability Rights Center can help with that.
Another thing that I found intriguing was throughout this pamphlet, 33 days is referred to as far as how much time you have to do a certain, how much time the consumer has to do a certain thing. What's the significance of the 33 days?
Well, that's a federal regulatory requirement in terms of making sure that people have essentially a 30-day window to address a situation that might result in their reduction or elimination of services, so that they have time to respond. But the process also requires that on the consumer side that we take action as quickly as we possibly can. The 33 days, I think the 3 days, in addition to the 30, in some ways is to give people time to get information through the mail, and, just adds a little bit of time window buffer in there.
There's a lot of information here, and I just wanted to check and see if you had anything else to say on this particular subject.
Well, I do, and I think what's really important is for people to know that they do have certain rights under the CanCare Medicaid program, and that they are, if they qualify for and need services, whether those are health care or supportive services, and they are eligible for those services, they have a right to receive those services. And sometimes the managed care organizations don't have networks of providers that adequately respond to the needs of every person in every location. And so it's important for consumers to know that they do have the right to those services if they're eligible for them and they qualify and they need those services. Then it's important for people to know that they deserve to get those services, and if they're not getting them through their managed care company, that it's important to file an appeal or a state fair hearing request. And by the same token, if someone's not treating you in a professional way, not being respectful, it's very appropriate to file a grievance and get people to be respectful.
Do you have any statistics which would show how successful this is or isn't at the moment?
This brochure or the filing of an appeal or state fair hearing?
The program in general.
Well, I think in terms of the program in general, there are some things that are of real concern to us. As I mentioned to you, we started by advocating for people in nursing homes 40 years ago, and one of the things that we look at is how are people being served now versus before CAN Care. And at the last oversight hearing at the state capitol this past month, we presented to legislators information about the number of people that are being served now in nursing homes or at home through the frail elderly waiver versus how many people were being served before CAN Care. And in both instances, there are fewer people being served now than they were being served before the managed care transition took place. So that's of real concern to us because one of the things that the state promised was that doing managed care through private insurance companies was not a way to reduce services or to cut people off from services. But that's not what the numbers are showing us right now.
What's the frail elderly waiver?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that. In our state, in order to, and in other states, but in our state, in order to avoid institutionalization, if you have a level of care need that requires nursing home level of care, you can avoid going to a nursing home through the Medicaid waiver for the frail elderly. In our state, there are a number of Medicaid waivers, one for physical disabilities, one for developmental disabilities, one for the frail elder, one for traumatic brain injuries, and there are other waivers that are specific for mental illness, mental health, and so the frail elder waiver serves those people who are older adults and who are eligible for nursing homes but choose to receive their care at home.
Mitzi, is there anything else you want to discuss?
Gosh, I don't think so, Joe, and you have been an exceptionally good interviewer. I really appreciate it because it is a lot of information to cover and you hit the high points.
Thanks very much. This is Joe Reinecker, and this has been Resource Central. Have a nice day, everybody.